All right, we want to thank everybody for joining us for today's live webinar entitled The Seamless Lab. It's presented by Sapio Sciences, and we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. But before we go into the actual presentation, before I hand it off to our presenter for today, I would like to at least frame out, who you're speaking with on the phone relative to Astrix. Astrix has been working with thought leaders and technology vendors in the lab informatics space now for the better part of the last 8 months, putting this series of live webinars together to cover a wide variety of topics. A lot of it is about kind of where we're going in terms of the transformation of the lab, from a paper-based system to a pure digital entity. And in terms of who Astrix is, so why are we doing this? Well, we're in this space. We're an informatics professional services company. We do strategic outsourced solutions as well, and we work exclusively within the scientific community. A couple of quick statistics about us. We were established in 1995, privately held still. We originated as an IT division of a company called APBI Life Science, which is a research organization. We operate from 7 offices in the United States and beautiful Costa Rica, and our headquarters are in Red Bank, New Jersey. The companies that we work with, the type of companies that we deal with on a day-in and day-out basis: Fortune 1000 life science enterprise, chemical, CPG, government, and research institutions, typically all that have fast-growing IT or outsourced or compliance needs. And our mission as a company has always been to deliver scalable, sustainable solutions to the scientific community. Let me go to the next slide, please. In terms of how we fit in this world of lab informatics and with technology vendors like our friends here from Sapio, what do we do? What role do we play? We work within the entire life cycle of scientific data systems. We can do pieces, et cetera. It really depends on an individual needs of a company. At the beginning, we help companies with their business process analysis and enterprise architecture. That's really helping them understand what's the right technology stack for them based on what they're doing, how they function as an organization, how their laboratory functions, et cetera, what their R&D infrastructure looks like. Then we can do actual technology selection services and development implementation, where we'll pick the right solutions based on what we know about the vendors and based on what we know about the needs of a client. From there, once done, we can do computer systems validation, and then we can even, at the end of it, provide a host of managed services to wrap around these technology solutions, everything from ongoing training to upgrades to the management of applications as a whole. And then finally, we can even staff. We could bring people in to help run these applications either in a remote basis or on site, and we can even staff scientific professionals for your organization. So that's enough about Astrix. I want to transition over to the reason you're here, which is to hear from Sapio, so we can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm going to introduce Kevin Cramer. He's the chief scientist at Sapio. Kevin, I'm going to let you pick up, and I will circle back at the end of the presentation to handle questions. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Kevin, and thanks to Astrix for allowing us to present today our vision of the Seamless Lab, and we're excited to be able to do so, and thanks all the attendees on this rapidly approaching holiday weekend for taking time to attend the presentation today. All right, so as we think about the Seamless Lab, we the way we like to think about things here is kind of from a first principles approach. This is kind of an approach in physics if you're not familiar with it, but it's kind of where you don't make any base assumptions out of the gate. You question kind of everything, even what might be what are considered to be commonly true things. But in regards to laboratories and scientific experimentation, why have information systems at all in life sciences? This is a very baseline question that we asked. And I think everybody should ask, why do we have, Kevin mentioned transitioning from paper to information systems, and the question would be, well, why should we do that, or should we even do that? Well, the answer may vary depending on what type of application you're in. If you're in the lab information management space, tracking laboratory process, you have a need to manage requests, that come into the laboratory for processing. This is something that might be an information technology solution. You need to be able to guide lab scientists through lab processes. You want to increase your quality, ideally, and one way to do that is to ensure consistency of process. Compliance obviously is one of the big drivers. If you're in a clinical lab or validated environment, then you don't have much of a choice. You need some information technology solution more than likely. and also to track data related to and about samples and process. So it's kind of tough to do this with paper, right? If you're trying to do also with paper and Excel, it's difficult for sure. What about in the ELN space, tracking experimental processes at your organization? One of the original drivers was patent protection. It's why people keep lab notebooks as well. But not only to record what they're doing, but really to have proof that they did those things in the event that they make some significant discovery and want to proceed to, get patent protection. But also now with, the ELNs have more science capability to be an adjunct to their, discovery efforts through aiding in design and discovery and ideation, such as designing a plasmid, a PCR primer, some reaction. You might need to set up and control instruments. Can't really do that with paper. So having an electronic system makes that more tenable. And also to just track data, track data in this case related to experiments, instrument data, and other entities. We'll use the term generic here as entities, which could be samples. It could be other types of materials like cell lines, compounds, plasmids, protein sequences, conjugates, what have you, and reagents. So if you ask this question, it's a valid question to ask. Clearly appears there's valid reasons to have a LIMS and an ELN. And most companies assume that's the case, right? Obviously they have a need. Once they determine they're going to budget for it and spend the money, they agree that they probably should have a LIMS and an ELN solution. But what happens is this. So they know they need a LIMS, and I'm talking about larger entities here. What happens over time? And they realize they need to manage samples. They'll get something to help manage their samples and their systems that'll do sample management for them. They realize they need to manage requests, and they might get a request management system. It may not be called a LIMS. It might be in a LIMS. It may or may not be. They have a bunch of storage units. They want to manage those, your freezers and your shelves and your racks and your boxes, and you want to manage these as well. There's solutions that do that. Then we're getting more specific into scientific process, but bioanalysis LIMS might be something they acquire, something like Watson LIMS. They may realize that we want to do NGS tracking or some other omics type process and find a LIMS that's good at handling that. Then they want to track stability, and maybe formulations, and they'll get a system that's good at that and amenable to that, and maybe other LIMS to do other things in their organization. And these are usually departmental decisions. So you as a user, a scientist or a lab manager are driven by what your lab needs. And you'll go in the market and find something that's fitted, purpose-built, and works well for what your lab needs. On the ELN side, there's chemists, and they might prefer a particular ELN to do their chemistry. Some ELNs are particularly strong at chemistry. But then there's molecular biologists, and they may not care about the chemistry part. They say, well, we've got to do molecular biology. We need to design our PCR primers or do restriction cloning or one of these type design efforts, and we need a system that allows us to design and register and search on these types of things. Then there's just general ELNs that don't, have general experiment tracking, like a notebook kind of process that they can type, notes in and things like that. And then there's even bioanalytical ELNs that exist out there as well. And there's probably more ELN flavors that I'm listing here. What I'm saying here is that all these can exist in a single company. And we've in fact seen something like this over and over in large pharma. But that's not really it. I mean, now people have SDMS too. If you don't know what SDMS is, it's a scientific data management system, which is really, basically it's sweeping up your instrument data, capturing the raw data, and then potentially creating some structure out of it. Some SDMSs even have some minimal visualizations, like looking at peaks on a chart from a HPLC, like a chromatogram or something in them. So that's another solution in the mix. People have analytics tools that they license to, help analyze scientific data that's used in experiments. If they want to visualize things, might have another tool for doing charting. In fact, frequently they do, or they might have multiple tools to do that. You might have a data lake. Okay, let's throw this data into a data lake as well. Oh, and we want to work with structured controlled vocabulary. Let's get an ontology tool, software tool as well. So you can see what's happening here. You're getting a kind of explosion of applications. And if you know something about network theory at all, think of these as nodes on a network. And the more nodes you have on the network, if you want to have them interplay in any way, it becomes a really difficult problem, because the more nodes you add to a network, the more what are called edges are needed. It means more interconnections that are needed between the nodes. And this graph kind of indicates that it's a nonlinear increase. Every time you add a new node, in this case, an application in your life sciences infrastructure, you're increasing not by one, but by much more the possible things that thing should be talking to inside your organization. And also, as you add nodes and edges to your network, you're increasing exponentially the complexity of your network. So what's the net result of all this? They actually don't integrate all these systems. They just simply don't do it. It's too complicated. Not only are there these fundamental problems of, we've got 15 systems and the complexity of integrating them all, but the systems themselves are problematic, because many systems, in fact, even ones today, lack a sufficiently robust ability to capture structured data and have a robust API to allow you to push and pull data from the system into other systems, and also to have data pushed into them. And so this creates great problems in trying to integrate, even two applications together can be problematic if they don't have a proper API. But there's other problems. I mean, if you have, let's say 10 systems, let's say 5 LIMS and 5 ELNs, and you say, we want to integrate these together, and what are the fundamental things you might want to care about integrating? Well, maybe samples, like we have a sample, right? And let's say you have the gym sample. Jim Zito sitting here with me. So you want the gym sample, it's in system A, but it's also in system B, C, D, and all the others. What if we update system A, the gym sample, and now we want to sync it to all the other systems, but what if in the other system somebody's updating the gym sample at the same time I'm updating the gym sample, right? So what's the real source of truth of information? So this is also, when we talk about complexity of the network increasing as you add nodes and edges, this is one of the fundamental problems, that you really just cannot really have a clean integration strategy for these types of things, because they're dynamic. A lot of the data is dynamic. Some isn't. Like when you run an instrument and you get data off of it, that should be static. It shouldn't be changed for that instance of that run, right? But there are many other things that are changeable things in the system. So does it matter? Does it matter if we're not integrating these things or not? We would suggest that any organization, when they're thinking about this question, should have this mindset, which is that your data is one of your most valued assets, if not your most valued asset. And if you think about it that way, if we can agree that this is a basic principle of a life science organization, what should you do? One of the obvious things, if I'm an executive sitting at GlaxoSmithKline or Huffman LaRoche or Johnson & Johnson, I'd say, well, we should reduce the nodes in the network. I mean, there's an implicit benefit to reducing the nodes, because the more nodes, the more systems we have to integrate, the harder it's going to become an impossible task. So we want to have less, right? Just less of these. Yeah, and we'll talk about the benefits that are beyond the complexity here, but we'll get into that in a moment. So you basically essentially want less software solutions, okay? So is that enough? You say, look, we reduced our whole company to 2 LIMS and 2 ELNs and 1 SDMS. Is that enough? We're collecting data. Well, it's not really, because if you want to, you're collecting data, and if you view data as your key asset, you have to be able to leverage it in some way, and that has implications then around how you think about these information technology solutions. So if you want to gain insights into your operations, whether lab operations or otherwise, and to accelerate discovery by leveraging data, there's certain things that are inherently required. And how do you get there? Well, the data in any system, the data must be targeted, searchable across the enterprise. Across the enterprise. So what does target searchable mean? Targeted searchable mean? It means something like this. Like if I want to search and say, well, I want to see where all the study subjects, where we had studies and we had subjects that were male over the age 50 and had kidney cancer, and we measured an analyte on them using flow. I want to see all that data. You should be able to search on that data and get to it. And here's a key point, not just being able to search on that data, but what you get back is important. If you're getting back things like links to experiments, that's not useful at all, really, from an analytical perspective. Links to experiments are nice. You can go see where the data was generated, but it's not something you can analyze, visualize at all. So you want to get back tabular data. You want to get back tables of data that you can actually do something with. So this search has 2 components to it. One is to be able to even affect the search, to search across entities like I just described in a very targeted, specific way. And then get back a table of data that you can define what that table looks like. What are the columns in here that I'm going to get back? Secondly, it implies that this data is your asset, that you should be able to visualize the data. And the key here, easily. I mean, if you say, well, I need a chart on this data, and we're talking to now, one thing I'm sure of in this, I'm not perfect at predicting the future for sure, but the one thing I'm 100% sure of is there's going to be more data in the future and not less. And often we're generating large amounts of tabular data, essentially instrument data, it's tables of data, and humans can't really assimilate 1,000 rows of data or 10,000 rows of data. They simply cannot do it. But we can assimilate visual information very well, hundreds of times better than we can tabular data. So you should readily be able to take tabular data and visualize it. And there shouldn't be 4 steps and 5 people to get that done. It shouldn't be, okay, I've got a table of data here, I just ran a search, I want to visualize it. I have to go talk to Joe over here who's in IT, and then he's got to talk to Ed, and then they got to do a query, Jane's got to do a query of the database, then we have to go to a third-party visualization tool, and then I can visualize it. If it's going to be like that, you're simply not going to do it because it's just too much effort. So there should be an inherent capability that any table of data, visualize it right in the system. And you should be able to feed the data easily into advanced analytics. There's all these amazing tools now, and particularly we've had things like curve fits, 4 and 5 parameter curve fits and regressions, analysis of variance, more standard statistics like chi-squares and Fisher's exact and ANOVA. But now these new things, these deep learning neural networks are quite amazing tools, but they're only good if you can feed them data, right? These are data hungry algorithms, and you don't want to be, having 10 data jockeys working for a month to get data to go into a deep learning neural network, especially if the data is already in the system, right? And you just can't get to it in an easy way. So we think these 3 things are fundamental, foundational requirements to monetize, to realize the value of the asset that you're spending so much. You're making such a large investment in collecting data. To be able to utilize that data, you need to have these as fundamental requirements. So how do you get there? You need a digital lab informatics platform and not point solutions, not point solutions. So I'm talking about a platform. If you notice the word here, it says a digital lab informatics platform. And I realize we have to educate people on what a platform is, because I don't know that people necessarily understand what a platform means, what that terminology means. So I'm going to kind of define it here. But a true platform can actually become any type of application. So it could become an inventory application. It could become a a sales application, it can become a customer service application, it can become a quality management system, it can become any of those things. And it can do that because it has these inherent capabilities around configuring the data model. You can easily configure the data model on a proper platform. No, you don't need an expert and technical expert to do it. It's easy to do. It should have built-in search capabilities. So even though we're changing the data model all around, that the search tools all just work automatically. I should be able to create visualizations of records in the system in the way I want them to view and look at. I should have extensive ability to control access to not only data, but features and functions. The system should scale well. These are inherent capabilities of a generic platform. An example of this is Salesforce. Salesforce has a very good generic platform. Microsoft Dynamics has one, and there's a few others. Actually, not many in the entire earth good platforms that exist because they're really hard to make. Now, a life sciences focused platform actually has to go further than that. It can't just offer those things. Now it has to offer the ability to do workflow tracking, like lab execution system type tracking, whether GMP, GCP, GLP, but tracking process, and also be able to track ad hoc or template-based experiments. So these are things that a general platform wouldn't necessarily do. It wouldn't do it, but in a life sciences platform, you need to do these things if you want to have a comprehensive solution. I'm going to go beyond that and say, okay, now if you want a life sciences informatics platform, so now we're breaking down all the elements of this term that we proposed people should be looking for. You have to add now advanced data visualization capability that are relevant for life science researchers and integrated analytics in the platform as well. So this is in fact what we've done at Sapio. We played the long game here. We decided all the way back before 2010 to create a platform. If the goal of the company was to get on the market, be successful, invest heavily in sales and marketing, and flip the company into IPO, which is fine. There's several companies now that's their goal, and they're doing a great job at it. We wouldn't have taken this approach. We would have built a purpose-built application that would be a point solution. It would have been a LIMS and would have been well-defined and did exactly what we defined it to do and not much else. But as a platform, you're in for the long game. Building a general platform probably is going to take you 5 years to get a really good, solid platform. If you want to put informatics on it and charting, you're looking at another year or two. And if you're looking at putting on an ELN and a LIMS on there, you're looking at 3 or 4 more years. So all in, you're looking at 15 years plus of hard work in the system to get it to be a world-class life sciences digital informatics platform. Our platform embodies all these things I talked about, a fully configurable data model. We have a low-code platform, so we're trying to avoid code. We want to make everything configuration that we can. We have a rules engine. You actually write a rule, business logic rule in the platform as a sentence. It's written as an English sentence. And this can control logic in the product by writing English sentences. We have integrated charting, integrated data warehouse. This is the analytics capability. The best search you'll find in any platform, and this includes things like life sciences. Configurable data views, we actually have integrated chat, so there's some social elements in the product. I don't have time to get into our data table functionality, but it's provably true that we have the best data table functionality on the market. Everything's wrapped in permissions, including features, functions, and data in a scalable platform. So this foundation would be beneficial for any application. Life sciences are not related to life sciences. But of course, we're keenly interested in life sciences, so we've built on this the LIMS, the ELN, and the SDMS, and it took a long time to get it all right. I'll be honest, it wasn't easy. Understanding what the market needs for an ELN, what they need for a LIMS, and getting it right. And for an SDMS to auto sweep and instrument data, keep the raw data, keep all the linkage, parse it, create structured representations associated with the proper samples in the system. Doing all this, was a long process, but we're there. We're there and we've done it. We didn't stop there. On top of this, we built a bunch of out-of-the-box applications, including registration, retrieval, and request management, a full bioanalysis LIMS solution, so method design, development, validation, and execution, and all the things that surround that function. Your curve fits and your stock solution preps and instrument calibration, et cetera. NGS, any genomics, omics, we've done it. NGS obviously is the highest growth and been a very large segment of our business. Stability and formulation, histopath, parallel medicinal chem, we're in protein engineering, and also MolBio. We have a really strong plasmid editor now, compares well with tools like SnapGene and what our friends at Benchling have inside the ELN as well. So, and that's freely available to academics, by the way, via our website, ELN. So what we've created is this LIMS and ELN, but now you get the benefits of an integrated solution. So beyond the network effect that I talked about, you don't, the integration cost in this case between LIMS and ELN is zero, already integrated. The administrative costs, like how many administrators, if you have 20 different systems, you need 20 different subspecialties of skills to implement them. And you're often contracting out to do that, okay? Like with Asterix, who can do that. Wouldn't it better to have one skill set, to do LIMS and ELN? That's a lot less money. I can tell you, computer information professionals are not cheap these days. So having less of them is better than more. So having a unified digital transformation solution solves the integration problem, the administration problem, and now you can monetize your asset because we have a harmonized, a uniform representation of samples, their containers, any other structured data, any unstructured data such as documents, your instrument data, all your storage and material information in a single system. And it's built on the platform. So this gives us agility to change. So the platform is not locked down in any way. Different from a purpose-built application. Somebody comes with a set of requirements and says, we need you to do this. Okay, it's great you're doing bioanalysis, but you're not doing this. We can build that very quickly on the platform. We're using the tools of the platform, the ability to configure the data model, to configure workflows, and use these low-code, no-code ability to extend for business logic functionality to rapidly build out and support new pipelines that we've never even seen before. So the platform ensures for 50 years, you're not going to, the platform won't be able to do anything you ever need to do. It can do anything you'll ever need to do because it is a platform. So this is where playing the long game is paid off, is that now we have the solution. And I can tell you top 5 pharma in the world is now using Exemplar for their digital transformation of their laboratories. A top 5 CRO is using us for digital transformation of their ELN and bioanalysis pipelines. Top 5 clinical lab in the world is using Exemplar to digitally transform their laboratories. So we're starting to see acceptance of this idea and people recognizing the importance of a platform. The people who know this the most are people who actually been down the road with several other LIMS and ELNs, and they've seen the pain points around getting them to do what they need to do, integrating them, pulling data in and out of them, adapting them to what they need, and understand the merits of having a platform. So that's it for me. So we can open up to questions now, and we appreciate your attention and look forward to answering any questions that we have. And I think Kevin's going to handle passing those on to me.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you so much, Kevin. And you could probably go to the next, I think there's the next slide here you can kind of park on with maybe some contact information on it. There we go. All right, let me do this real quick. Get the recording stopped.